Hello, class. This is your professor, Dr. Brian Lippincott. And I'm here today to tell you a little bit of more of my personal stories, my own personal red book that I've been working on, explaining my own life, and to both myself, first, to understand it in my individuation process, and why I became a therapist and how that happened. And so just so you can understand me personally when I'm giving you these lectures. So, the transcendent flow, a unified field theory of analytical psychology and narrative therapy. So trying to put it together, the old school analytical psychology, the Jungian analysis, the more analytic frame, in with the postmodern neo-Jungian narrative therapy by Michael White and David Epstein. We talk about how we have stories in our life and how that guides our life and how we can work with families and children in order to deal with making their life their more preferred story, not the same old story they've been telling that they're a troublemaker or whatever. Integrating myth, psyche, and family systems. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. So we have choice in this. This is our individuation. The goal of individuation. The lifelong process of becoming whole. Undivided self by integrating the conscious and the unconscious. So our whole goal is to make the unconscious conscious and learn about the deeper aspects of ourselves. Bridging the internal world of Jungian depth psychology with the external world of family systems. So when you look at my own personal theory, creative depth psychology, and I give a lecture on that already, but you can look it up. You can hear about that. But as far as my archetypes growing up, my aunt gave me a book, Tarzan of the Apes, when I was about 8 years old, and it was my very first book, and I really loved that, and I loved Tarzan, partly because of what I was feeling about being a lonely kid with having problems in the family and that kind of stuff. But Tarzan represents nature and the body, the flow. That's the extroverted feeling. I'm an extroverted feeling type, so that's my earliest one. That's kind of the animal, but also the abandoned youth in the jungle without really having right guidance. I had a sister that was 12 years older than me. Her name was Glinda, and she really was Glinda, the good witch. Basically saved my life. She left the house. She at 17, she split, got married, and eventually came back and was always a big part of my life. But around 9, 10, 11, I started realizing that Tarzan was getting in trouble for too much wildness, too much earth there, too much feeling type. And so I had to create James Bond. This is symbol of James Bond, shaken, not stirred. Reason, logic, boundaries, introverted thinking, a transcendent function. These are two split parts of myself that I needed to integrate in my journey. Integrating the corporeal cowboy. I went to Salinas High and we were the cowboys. I'll talk a little bit about that. But the masculine, strong, dominant cowboy and absurd reason to create the whole man, bringing all these together. Now, the mechanics of growth, there's a triad of transformation. First, we have synchronicity. A meaningful coincidence, the bridge between the inner psyche and the outer reality. Flow, the optimum state of engagement. Order in consciousness. That's the flow state that we enter, where we shut down through hyperfrontality our whole inner critic. And then individuation, which is the journey that we're on. Individuation is the result, an increasing awareness of one's unique psychological reality. So really, this Goldilocks zone here of transformation is where you have synchronicity, the coincidences, the guiding things that just happen to you, the flow, the optimal state of consciousness, and then ending in individuation. Let's go into defining those. Synchronicity, an acausal connecting principle. Moving beyond cause and effect, then it was a collaboration between C.G. Jung and physicist Wolfgang Pauli, bridging psyche and matter. And that's a kind of Wolfgang Pauli was a quantum physicist that Jung, he had a lot of trouble, but he lived in Zurich with Jung. He was a professor at one of the universities there. And Wolfgang Pauli went to Jung for several years and got Jungian analysis. And Jung wrote a book analyzing his dreams. But they were working for the rest of their lives together on that. They believed in panpsychism, or dual aspect monism. So monadism is there's one thing. So they're saying that reality, of the physical reality and the psychic inner reality, are both part of the same thing. They're both dual aspects of the same whole, monadism, which was from the famous philosopher. I'll think of his name in a minute. But flow is order in consciousness. So as I said earlier, transient hypofrontality. So for a while, your inner critic, your inner front part of your brain here is shut down. This front part, the part that says you can't do that, that's wrong. You lose your self-consciousness. So imagine as an adolescent, you're no longer self-conscious. That's when you can dance and you can talk to, and this can, in flow state, it happens without any substances or drugs or alcohol or anything. In order to get there, you have to be really pushing yourself and challenging yourself, 4% of your maximum of what you can do, and you have enough skill to do it. So if you have too much challenge, if you're an 8-year-old playing against 12-year-olds, that might be too much. But you got to have a balance between challenge or skill. If you have too much skill and not enough challenge, then you're bored. If you have too much challenge and not enough skill, then you're overwhelmed and anxious. So you have to get in that sweet spot again. Flow is all about the sweet spot. A lot of things in life are all about the sweet spot. When we talk about families, you have enmeshed and you have disengaged. The sweet spot is in the middle between those two. Flow is the lived experience of synchronicity. That's the connection between the two. Flow is the lived experience of synchronicity. It's not about gaining control, but transcending the worry about control. So you're just letting go and you're sacrificing some ego. Beyond the individual, the family unconscious, the family has that interconnection as a team does. And participation mystique, the shadow side, the unconscious fusion, enmeshment, lack of boundaries. The light side of the family unconscious, deep empathy, nonverbal communication, Ubuntu. That's the African American. I'm saying we are because they are. In other words, we're all part of a legacy, a history that comes through us, that comes up through the roots and becomes whatever tree we're going to be. But that same root system, all the fungus and the worms and the roots and everything that are down there, are where really the growth comes from, of the new growth. But if you're fused, then that new growth can't happen. Adolescence. Now, the myth that I had of adolescence is slaying the monster to find the self. The archetype of St. George. And if you see that there, St. George kills the dragon. He defeats the dragon. In adolescence, we develop a self in our 20s where, I'm victory, I'm good, I've conquered this thing. The metaphor, the dragon represents mental illness, trauma, and inner demons that we have. For instance, it's very common in college to have issues with alcohol or other substances. You go through some stages. Now, some people don't come out of these stages of mental illness, trauma, and demons, but they get a chance during that late adolescence to conquer that. Task. The youth must slay the dragon to assert the ego. But you don't kill it for all time. We're going to move on later on and talk about St. Michael and the dragon, and that's the adult generative version. But in adolescence, we need to accomplish this and develop our persona and become our true self. Jung said the persona is what you get paid for. So you have to develop that ability early along to support yourself and be able to move out and then launch. And in order to launch a rocket ship, you got to have a firm grounding for that down there. Adulthood. Now, this is like the midlife crisis, the eternal struggle of St. Michael. The archetype, St. Michael in the chains. So he's chaining himself to the dragon, and the story is the dragon is the devil, and is going to destroy the earth and kill all the people. And St. Michael challenges the dragon and fights with him, but he can't overcome him. He realizes he can't overcome him. So what he does, the dragon is going to destroy the earth in this battle. But St. Michael says, I'm going to sacrifice myself for all people, the Bodhisattva vow. I can't be enlightened till all people are enlightened. So what St. Michael does, he chains himself to the dragon and hurls himself and the dragon out in space for all eternity. St. Michael is wrestling with the dragon mission to save all people. So we have to, as therapists, this is the therapist journey now. We're no longer an adolescent. We have to chain ourselves to constantly fighting this dragon, like suicidality, mental illness, cutting, all those psychosis, all the things that we're fighting against. We're never going to really defeat them. We're going to have to be in the battle until we can't battle anymore. We're human, but St. Michael represents that battling part. In midlife, we cannot simply kill trauma. We must bind, manage, and integrate it. The shift from ego building to soul making. That's a very good. The shift from ego building in adolescence to soul making in middle age or in 40s. That's 50 is the new 30. The healing power of the cave. The archetype Amaterasu, the sun goddess. And it's interesting, in Japan, the mythology of Shintoism is that the Amaterasu is the sun goddess. It's not, usually in a lot of cultures, the sun goddess like Apollo is a male. But in this, it's the female goddess that represents the sun, and her brother is Susanoo. Susanoo is the storm god, and he's always causing all this chaos and things. So what happens is Amaterasu gets upset at her brother, and she retreats into the cave, and all the world goes dark, which is really scary. Now, we applied this in a place I worked right after I got my master's degree. I hadn't even started my doctorate yet, but I was working in Berkeley at a place called St. George Homes, which was for psychotic adolescents. And when I was put in charge of the Rainbow House, which was the only closed house in all of the 12 houses of St. George where the kids lived, where they couldn't leave, when they were really at a dangerous side, they were going to have to be hospitalized, but we had our own self-containment thing where they could contain and reflect on themselves. And we dream work every day. We had like literally 5 times the more staff. We had 8 staff on duty at a time for 8 kids, where in the normal house they would have 2 or 3 staff for 8 youth. But the methodology was sometimes withdrawal, introversion is necessary for rebirth. So they would have a 6-month period where they would be introverted. We would do a program with them, constant art and all that. They didn't even leave to go to school. We had brought the school to them. The case study, and this is a case study of a young woman that was in Rainbow House, Heidi and the vampire. She kept dreaming of a vampire. The vampire, parasitic, draining vitality. And this young woman had severe trauma, sexual abuse, had been on the street as she was about 16 when I met her, but she, from 12 to 16, she was on the street and prostitute, all this stuff. Very young. The intervention, active imagination, entering the trance to the shadow. And I had developed a relationship of trust with her. So we went into the dream and we had her dialogue with and she was more like, get the hell out of here, you damn, why do you want to suck my blood and all that. The resolution, I can outrun them. I saw the sunlight breaking down, moving from dissociation to shadow integration. She was realizing that sometimes she was she was kind of a controlling person in the group there, and she realized how somewhat she was abusive and started getting insight into her own unconscious and became a wonderful young woman. Tammy and the zombie, another client I worked with in private practice, which partly what I wrote my book about, analytical psychology and family system. But one of her dreams was a zombie. Nobody is home. And what does the symbol of the zombie represent? Nobody's home. The living dead, they're infected. They have no autonomy in themselves and choice in themselves. They're just blindly following one step after another. They're homeless. They have no place of home. They have no family. They have no connection, which are some of the things like we've lost and some of the things that are happening right now with all the stuff that's going on in the world. The context, a pregnant teenager crushed by judgment of people. The resolution, breaking the parental complex, realizing she's not an extension of her father, but a mother with her own mind. That was what came out of the dream of the zombies when we had to work several sessions on her zombie dream. That was a great leap forward for her. From dream to reality, family sculpting. So this is where you work with the family to do sculpting by having them move around and get in certain positions. And for instance, the dad comes home and the mother is on her knees trying to placate the daughter, and the daughter is blaming the mother, and there's a big fight between them. And the dad says, "Oh, I don't even want to come home." And he's turned away from the. You have them get into these different positions, and then everybody talks about their feelings. But the technique is you physically arrange the family members to reveal the emotional dynamics. The turn, rigid saint-sinner roles dissolve into forgiveness. That's the goal. The outcome, differentiation, moving from stuckness to family flow. So you can have a dance at the end, or you have the movement after it's dissolved, and they can understand themselves more physically and emotionally. You're using the somatic unconscious. This is where you're using dance, movement, psychodrama is all part of the dream to reality, family sculpting. Now, the unified theory comes from actually a lot of really good research on the flight of starlings. How do they stay so close together, or blue angels or whatever? And they have only 3 rules that, in their brain that all the starlings follow. And by following those, they're able to stay in a really tight formation and make it all together, but have their individuality too, so they don't crash. So the key one, separation, autonomy, and individuation. So you want to build in a family, this is the metaphor of family flow, you want to build in the family that autonomy, that individuation, so they're separate. They realize that they are a separate person, and as they grow, they get more freedom, and they get to realize who they really are. I'm really into math. I'm really into science. I like to draw. I like to make films, whatever. But so there's separation. That's one of the guiding principles. Now, you also need alignment. You need a shared direction. You need a goal that we know which direction we're all going in. We're all aligned. To help our individual growth, we have to have a group alignment. We need you to be home at 6 o'clock to eat dinner, or we have 1 meal a day for sure together, and we do those kind of things to maintain that alignment. Then we have cohesion, which is staying close, and participation mystique. That's where you stay in cohesion, you're aligned, and you have this cohesion where you get close to the other people, but not too close. You stay in your individual kind of lane, but you're getting close. As one person moves to the left, you move a little bit to the left. We are all part of a flicking flock, autonomous, yet aligned. That's the key, the balance of those. And later in talks about family therapy that I have in my YouTube, or I can give you in this class, we can talk about how that works in a family. The vital God of play. So play is really important, and it's an important part of the vital God of play is one of the poems that I wrote, and one of the lines in that. The part as whole can help the earth to swing on a branch of love. Now that's evolving out of Tarzan. But the part as whole, the part is the whole, and the whole is the part. And help the earth swing on a branch of love. Remembering. So remembering, like you might ask somebody in narrative therapy, Michael White would always say, wow, you feel like you're really a loser and a troublemaker. That's the story that you're telling yourself and that other people are telling you. Is there anybody that you have ever been with that, if I said, I have this person that really follows rules, they're really helpful, they really are loving, they're caring, all these things that you think you're not. Is there anybody in your life? And they usually say, my grandma, or my uncle, or my aunt, or my teacher, or somebody. So you're remembering, you're helping that person become a member of the group of not trouble-making people. One of the great techniques that we can do, you have to get permission from the parents and everybody to do this, but is called a letter writing campaign. So if kids in schools get reputations, like Brian's a troublemaker. He's always, by the time I'm in the 3rd grade, the 1st and the 2nd grade teacher have already told the 3rd grade teacher to watch out for me. So I'm a member of the troublemakers already. That's my reputation. So, if you get permission and you really are working on that with the kid, and the kid agrees, I want to be anti-trouble. I want to fight back against trouble because we've externalized trouble. So he's not a troublemaker. Trouble gets a hold of him. So we write a letter to everybody saying, I'm Johnny and I'm his therapist, and we're working on an anti-trouble campaign and a loving other people campaign. So if you ever notice Johnny doing anything nice to other people or helping anybody or becoming a kid falls down on the playground and he picks him up, any of those things, would you write us a little note that you noticed that? And teachers and people are more than willing to do that. And then what happens is you collect the notes, and in therapy you say, oh, Mrs. Jones noticed you did this. Sally was crying and you went up and tapped her on the back, or so-and-so was having trouble doing the homework and you walked through the long division with her, or whatever it was. That you're becoming a member of a different group. That's called a remembering practice in narrative therapy. And that's what we all want to do, is become members of a whole. So that's a little bit that I wanted to tell you about my own philosophy and my own ideas. And in the next week or so, I'll be putting up another video that'll talk about my own individual personal life and my traumas and things that I've impacted as a wounded healer. This is a little bit of the theory, then you're going to get a little bit of the practicality.